October 14, 1975. Angola. Deep inside enemy territory. This column crosses the border under political deniability. No flags, no dog tags. One instruction: if you get caught, you are a mercenary. Officially, it is about protecting the Ruacana Kaluek scheme and hitting SWAPO bases. But on the ground, the real goal is bigger: shape who controls Angola before independence. UNITA and the FNLA are the partners. The MPLA has Soviet backing, and Cuban advisors are already in country. Then November 1975 hits. Havana launches Operation Carlota, and the airlift begins. Now picture the point of the spear. It is not a tank. Task Force Zulu crosses into Cuando Cubango, and a 6-ton wheeled gun car screams ahead through the dust. A 90mm cannon on a light chassis, the Eland 90. In just 33 days, Zulu will drive about 3,159 kilometers and fight through 21 battles and skirmishes. So here's the question: how did a light armored car become the spearhead of Operation Savannah and teach a whole army to fight on speed? We have to set the board. In late 1975, Angola was collapsing into civil war. Portugal was withdrawing under the Alvor Agreement, with independence set for November 11, 1975. The transition collapsed into open fighting between the three movements. Three factions vied for power: MPLA, FNLA, and UNITA. Into this erupted outside powers. The South African Defense Force, the SADF, entered not as an open army, but as a shadow force. One key spearhead was Task Force Zulu. Built around FNLA troops, trained by SADF, one reconnaissance commando, and led by Koljan Dirk Breitenbach. In some accounts, Zulu fielded roughly 500 men, with a small SADF officer corps guiding the drive. That mix helped keep identities blurry on the ground. It backed UNITA and FNLA against the MPLA, which was Soviet-backed and soon reinforced by Cuban combat troops. The SADF objective was clear on paper: advance rapidly north, disrupt MPLA positions, strengthen UNITA's grip, and ultimately influence the outcome of Angola's independence. The clock was ticking, and time was short. The plan escalated fast: push north, and if possible, seize Luanda before Independence Day. Over weeks, SADF columns crisscrossed hundreds of kilometers of jungle, bush, and scrubland. Some units drove as much as over 3,000 kilometers in the first 33 days alone, a pace that stunned both allies and enemies. This was not a conventional war. This was mobile warfare at high tempo, and it placed enormous demands on every element of the force. Now, meet the core of our story: the Eland 90 armored car. It was a four-wheeled reconnaissance vehicle, essentially a light armored car, not a tank. It weighed about 6 tons, carried a 3-man crew, could hit roughly 100 kilometers per hour on road, and had about a 450 kilometers range. It was built to move, not to absorb punishment. It carried a 90mm cannon borrowed from older designs and mounted on a fast, wheeled chassis. Its protection was light, its engine modest, its role in doctrine even simpler: scouting, screening, and convoy escort. Savannah forced the Eland to operate far from supply points, so ease of field maintenance mattered as much as firepower. But if the column was stopped, the Eland's light protection and mine threat could turn speed into a trap. On paper, doctrine placed vehicles like this behind heavier units, to support them, to gather information, to cover flanks. But the SADF that entered Angola in October 1975 had no heavy armor to speak of. No modern tanks, no modern mechanized infantry carrier like the later Ratel. Mostly soft-skin trucks and Unimog-based transports, backed by a handful of armored cars like the Eland. That should have been a problem. If the enemy had heavy guns, if they struck first, if they encircled them, the SADF would be in deep trouble. Light armor could be pierced by mines, anti-tank rifles, and heavier artillery. So the solution was not thicker armor. It was movement, initiative, and tempo, never staying still long enough to be decisively engaged. That's where the Eland 90 went from being a reconnaissance car to a weapon of mobile shock action. Clause 1 in our evidence staircase. SADF adopted speed and shock as a fighting method, instead of the classic infantry armor dance where you push slowly, clear each village with caution, and hold ground. The SADF columns did something different. They advanced fast, hard, deep. In short, they did reconnaissance by fire, moving forward with firing capability and forcing the enemy to respond under uncertain conditions. This was not textbook NATO or Warsaw Pact doctrine. It was improvised, bold, in times when it worked, terrifying for the opposition. And the vehicles at the cutting edge were the Eland, light, quick, and mounted with powerful guns relative to their weight class. Unlike a heavier tank, the Eland could screech off-road, dart through gaps, and fire on targets of opportunity, then vanish before significant anti-tank forces could respond. That doctrine became the heartbeat of how the SADF chose to engage. Always move, always push, never allow the enemy to settle. Second floor on the staircase. The result of this high tempo was massive operational space gained early in the campaign. The SADF's task force groups like Zulu, Foxbat, Orange, and X-Ray moved hundreds of kilometers into Angola in just days. They captured towns, interdicted lines of communication, and constantly forced MPLA units to react. Because these groups had squadrons of Eland 90 seconds at their heads, they were able to break ambushes before they solidified, force enemies to deploy defensive positions prematurely, and keep initiative for long distances. None of this was supposed to be possible for a force lacking heavy armor and formal supply line. Yet it happened, delivering fast victory on the Nia River on the road from Sila to Kibala, a choke point that turned mobility into a life or death test. This engagement was chaos, heavy fire, confusion, and terrain that funneled forces into narrow battle space. The crossing was covered by anti-tank missiles. But a column of 12, Eland 90 seconds, backed by infantry, broke through by skirting the road and confusing the missile teams. Artillery observers in a top-hat fire control post helped pin and strip positions on the far bank. Here, instead of waiting for heavier siege guns or reinforcements, columns of Eland 90 seconds drove forward under fire, used their mobility to flank and punch hard with their 90mm guns, and broke the enemy's axis of attack. This was not cover and hold. It was decisive action at speed. For the men on the ground, this was no textbook maneuver. It was pure, sharp edge of survival, aggression, and improvisation. And on film, it looked unlike anything seen before from SADF. That moment is where doctrine met reality and doctrine won. There is another layer often overlooked. South Africa did not officially acknowledge the deployment of its regular army inside Angola at first. Politically, it was all wrapped in deniability. This meant that many of the vehicles, including Eland's, operated alongside UNITA forces, with markings that blurred identities and confused both enemy and external observers. That anonymity did more than protect political interests. It gave SADF forces tactical surprise. MPLA units never knew exactly what force or flag they were facing until it was too late. This worked to extend the tactical shock effect beyond physical speed into an information and psychological dimension. In short, enemies didn't know what hit them until they felt the shock of 90mm fire and realized they were already being outmaneuvered. Now here's the honest, critical pivot you need to understand. Operation Savannah did not end with a clear strategic victory. The MPLA and Cuban forces eventually drove SADF and allies back, and Angola remained under MPLA control. So why does this matter? Because the secret weapon of Savannah was not about winning that war outright. It was about learning how to fight long, mobile campaigns where agility, speed, initiative, and tactical innovation mattered more than sheer firepower alone. Savannah became a laboratory, a proving ground where the SADF's light armored doctrine took shape through real combat, not theoretical manuals. So here is the big question. If the Elands and their tactics were so effective, why did Operation Savannah not achieve political success? The first answer is political. The world was watching, and once major powers stepped in, the conflict scaled beyond what a light armored force could shape by itself. Second answer, logistics. The deeper you push, the thinner your supply lines become, and the more you depend on allies and friendly terrain. Third, external intervention. Cuban and Soviet support for MPLA was decisive in turning the tide, strategically, if not tactically. So we are left with this paradox. Savannah's operational playbook worked, but the political context overwhelmed it. That paradox is what makes the Eland 90 in this campaign a lesson in war, not myth. After Savannah, the SADF did not abandon what it learned. It refined it. Elands continue to be used in mobile campaigns, and the SADF sought better vehicles and tactics for future operations throughout Angola and Southwest Africa. Eland's limitations, light armor and vulnerability to mines, helped push doctrine toward heavier wheeled vehicles and integrated mechanized units. But the core idea stayed the same: speed, surprise, and mobility over slugging matches. Operation Savannah may have ended without a decisive win, but its lessons lived on in every future cross-border campaign the SADF fought. And at the heart of that story was a light armored car, the Eland 90, not just a piece of metal and bolts, but a catalyst for a whole new style of warfare. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives into forgotten military innovations, and let me know in the comments, what other lost secret weapons changed how wars were fought? We won't stop digging. And subscribe for more military Africa content.